guys, welcome back to Market Curry. This is Shikhar.
I'm Rahul.
And I'm Isha.
Yeah, I have a bit of cold because of the Boston weather, so excuse me if I sneeze or if I wipe my nose during
Just
the
don't
video.
sneeze on me, please.
The weather is good, bro.
Yeah,
The
it's,
weather
it's so
is
good.
it good?
Yeah,
I
of
don't
I
know.
like the weather.
It is sunny and 17 degrees Celsius a day, and the next day it's snowing and 0 degrees.
That's
So
true.
I think it's not good weather. But anyway, we have Isha with us, our batchmate from MSQF. Isha, just tell everybody about yourself and about your background and interests.
Yeah, start with your bachelor's.
Okay, so I did my bachelor's in economics from University of Mumbai, and then I completed my CFA level 1 in 2019, and then I went on to start my career in commercial mortgage-backed securities. That is what I'm primarily going to talk about over here, and that is our focus for this session.
Focus for the session, bro.
For this session, huh?
इतना serious हो रहा अब तो
Why?
भाई.
She is more excited about the podcast than us.
Yeah, bro.
And we are happy about that.
Just don't keep banging the table.
हाँ.
It'll catch
Okay.
nice.
इसको आता नहीं ना पहली बार है ना
पहली बार नहीं, second time.
second time अच्छा for context please
Yeah.
check the comments
Okay.
Yeah, so after CFA, continue.
Yeah, so essentially I cleared my CFA level 1 in 2019, and then I was enrolled for the second level that was supposed to happen in June 2020, but given the circumstances with COVID-19, it got postponed by about 2 years, or which is 4 attempts, because at that point it was 6 months of a gap between 2 consecutive attempts that you could enroll to. So my obvious choice was to start looking for employment, and fortunately I found one in October 2020, and that was in the US markets. So it was focused on securitization in the US, and more so on mortgage-backed securities, which were collateralized by or backed by commercial real estate, which is the talk of the entire economy right now, given how bad it is doing. But yeah, it was terrible at that point as well, and there were different sort of challenges, given there were absolute shutdowns across the US, and of course mortgages were on default, and there were moratorium periods, but there were still foreclosures and everything happening. So all of that, and then there were policy changes.
ASMR हो रहा है यहाँ पे.
Okay. And sorry. And then there were policy changes, given there was liquidity getting pumped in, given again it's housing market, so it has to be saved. So there was a lot of liquidity that was pumped in by government buying these securities to be able to create liquidity and maintain investor sentiment, or not just investor, but the general population's sentiment around this.
so to sum it up for you, Isha worked in mortgage-backed securities MBS in Morningstar.
Yep.
She was working out of India,
Yeah.
but she was dealing with North American region.
Yes.
So she was involved in that particular domain, and she worked for how many years?
Close to 3 years.
3 years. So I think she has the most amount of experience of any of us.
Yeah,
in our
combined.
course. Yes, combined. So, but anyway, so Isha comes in with a lot of experience and exposure to an industry which actually was the cause of the financial crisis. We'll come back to that later. So, anything else you want to ask about her background, Rahul?
I'm just going through her resume. Let's start with your going through her LinkedIn profile. Let's just start with it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, so you're working there as a credit analyst, right?
Yep.
Structured finance. What are structured assets?
Okay, so mortgage-backed securities or structured finance essentially is where banks are aiming to, create liquidity. So what happens, at least with mortgage-backed securities, is that when you buy a housing loan or any commercial or any sort of real estate loan, it is essentially going on for 30 years or 10 years. Or it's really
Longer
long,
Long.
right? So banks are not going to, wait until you clear out your P&I, that is your debt service, for 10 to 30 years altogether, which is why what they do is they will club all of these mortgages, and they will sell their loan books to an investment bank, or they will create a trust especially for this at
Which
discount.
is an SPAC.
Yeah, which is a special purpose vehicle,
SPV.
SPV or SPACs.
Yeah, and which is basically also called as bankruptcy remote vehicle, basically created just so if there is any default happening at the borrower level, it should not be the bank should not, or anybody big enough should not get affected, and the losses should be only limited to the investors in this transaction.
So banks are just the intermediaries.
Yes.
Okay.
Banks are intermediaries between the home buyers and the investment companies, or the investors.
Investors. Also, one small catch over here is that it is very interesting that this is not only banks, it is lenders that we refer to over here, because it's also going to be other lending institutions and not very restricted to banks or banking and financial institutions.
So you mean to say that a regulated bank, any institution apart from a regulated bank that is governed by the federal authority, that is not governed. I mean not SEBI,
the
RBI,
US.
RBI or the Federal Reserve.
Okay, over here the US SEC and the
Federal Reserve.
The Federal Reserve.
Yes. So any institution that is not governed by those institutions can be
Sort
lending
of,
money and
loosely.
dealing with MBS.
Yes. I mean, of course, there are going to be other frameworks that govern them, but obviously, it's not as they necessarily don't need banking license to be able to advance these loans. Yep.
Yeah, so at the end it's just an SPV, right? So they don't really need a license for that.
Yeah, I mean
That's what I feel.
Anybody can create an SPV if I'm not wrong.
So that is a different counterparty in this. So let's not probably get that,
of
because
course.
it's going to get very complex, like the entire structure over here.
I hope this wasn't too complex what Isha just said, but
Yeah.
But I can maybe summarize this in very brief. That
for sure, please reach out to Isha on LinkedIn.
Cool. Not right now.
I'm
Okay,
just
cool.
kidding. I'm just kidding. No, if you want to elaborate on whatever you want to emphasize more upon and what you feel is important, then you can definitely go ahead.
You just
Definitely.
just go ahead. with it.
Definitely go ahead.
Okay, so very quickly,
Yeah.
what happens is if there are a set of borrowers and they borrow for building their house or whatever, what happens is banks give them money. 10 years, like I said, it's very difficult for them to wait all these years. They sell their loan book to a different entity. They create a trust out of this, and this trust will pool all of these mortgages, and the entire pool is tranched into different bonds.
Credit rating, on the basis of the credit rating.
Or basis of the credit ratings that we assigned at Morningstar. And these are essentially based on, like you said, credit risk profiles. Investors, put their money into it, and the money flows back towards, the SPVs.
Got it.
Yep. So this is how it happens.
Isha, what do you think are key risks or inherent risks involved in something like a CMBS?
Okay, so essentially, because it deals a lot with mortgages, interest rates, obviously, and given the current scenario, it's really important to factor this in. However, to note that CMBS, at least, I'm not fully aware of RMBS, which is the residential mortgage-backed securities. At least in CMBS, there's a thing called conduit. Now, I'm again not going to get into the depths of certain terms. You can go and Google it, or you can reach out to me to know more. So conduits essentially work on fixed rate loans. So these loans were fixed back in the early years when the interest rates were still a lot better and a lot feasible for borrowers. So of course there are different sorts of things going on right now, given offices currently are not at capacity. So borrowers not able to get their money back. The cash flows that are generated from office properties or other similar properties are not getting recovered, which is why they are again facing default irrespective of the interest rates. Again, this is because businesses are not able to what happened? Businesses are not able to start new ventures or venture into different
Got it.
So how
projects.
do you work with it? Like, did you use some stress test or Monte Carlo simulation?
So I was not I was only on qualitative analysis. Of course, we interpreted the numbers that our quantitative model gave out, but yeah, those models did work on Monte Carlo simulations, like you mentioned, and there were multiple, factors that we took into consideration.
Like,
So it was, how much the entire borrowing amount is, the coupon, which is basically the interest rate on this loan. Then
cash flows.
the cash, so underwriting is basically at the issuance of that loan. What is the prediction of your future cash flows? Not future cash flows at present value. It's just real estate. Valuation works very differently.
The
And
forecasting, right?
works very differently. It's not very similar. So you don't do it for multiple years. You do it for your current, that is your as is, and you do it probably for your stabilized, which is if you have a business plan in terms of renovations and such things, what your rents will go up to. These basically, and then your appraisal happens through a third party like JLL and all of these CBRE and all of these entities.
And what comprised a qualitative analysis?
Yes.
Did you have a
No. Go
So sorry, other factors that were included in the model were your loan to value, which is a very important ratio, which tells about how much equity the borrower has put in and how much borrowing is there as opposed to the value of the property. And ideally it has to be around 60-70%, not more than that. But we saw that during these crisis periods, they shot up to 120-150, which means anything above the 100% level is going to be your loss severities. So we used to try to forecast these based on our historical conditions and try to factor them into our in our expected losses at loan level as well as pool level. So
Got it.
Makes sense. I think that was insightful. So how at Morningstar, how was your day structure like? How did you plan out your day? How did you work? Possibly on a project, or what was your like a
Journey.
project structure like?
Okay, so we did not really work on projects in our case. We did have matrix hierarchy, obviously, given I was based in Mumbai and I worked with Chicago and Toronto offices. So basically what we used to do was we would log in at around 11 or 12 in the afternoon, because we wanted some overlap during our afternoons with these guys. So there used to be tons of emails in the morning, obviously, given they would email us about all the correspondence at their business close, and that we had to start off reading with. And of course there used to be a lot of reading that would go out, because because that period was completely unstable. We saw a dip because of COVID-19 shutdowns, and then rose back up after policy decisions changed, quantitative easing started happening.
The V-shaped recovery, right?
Yep, absolute. And then again with the whole geopolitical conditions, and still not a lot of resilience shown by the commercial real estate fundamentally in terms of how the cash flows that were generated. So even if policies were trying to support them, they did not really affect the underlying businesses of these tenants that were actually leasing these properties. So in the end it did not really work out for them, and that is why like we are seeing in the US, or I guess probably globally, because China is also facing tremendous issues with commercial real estate. So
a period of volatility, that is what you worked in. I mean, you worked in till 2023?
Yes.
So 2020 to 2023?
Yes.
Right? So you worked through COVID, you worked through a war, 2 wars rather, if I'm not wrong.
Absolutely.
So I think that might have had a drastic impact on the market.
Absolutely.
Right? And a lot on your learning as well.
Yeah.
So you might want to emphasize any challenging or a unique situation that you came across during your tenure?
Nothing unique as such because I was in the middle of the whole turmoil, so
Right.
there was no, you know,
It was normal for you.
yeah, it was just normal for me, so nothing.
Now,
very
and minus
special.
20%, yeah, it's normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
जाता रहता
Very, very routine.
Only a loss of $20 billion. That's all.
Oh yeah. We used to deal with with really big ticket
I'm sure.
sizes.
I'm sure.
Because commercial real estate.
Bonds itself is a huge,
Exactly.
its volume, it's
Yeah.
a large sum of money. It's not, it can't even compare to, can't even be compared to equities.
Yeah, yeah.
Because,
Did you,
Go ahead.
Did you get any commission on that?
No, obviously
Salary.
no.
Effectively 0.0001% of the entire.
That so our revenue
Exactly.
systems, would actually work. The company's revenue systems would work on like some basis points of the transaction size.
Yes.
So just imagine the kind of
Some basis points of the
of the transaction
So,
size.
like
yeah.
even 1 basis point is very low.
Very low.
Very low.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you talk about bonds per se, 1 basis point can be significant because if it's like $1 billion and 1 basis point of
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, yeah.
or
Of course,
0.01%, 0.01% of that,
Yeah,
that is the
sort
1%, 1 basis point.
Yes.
So 1 BPS is 0.01% for people who don't know.
Yeah.
So if it's $1 billion worth of a transaction, then you can calculate what a 0.1% means in commission from one transaction. So that's the sheer volume of this industry, and I feel that it actually drives financial markets and economies per se.
Yep.
So that is absolutely very interesting, and I'm actually currently studying fixed income securities during my course, and I'm really intrigued by what she's learned because I'm actually learning about that in theory.
Let's go, actually.
You've not taken fixed income.
I have taken computation and it's better than fixed income, bro. That's what I feel.
I mean, any subject,
That's
any subject can be.
subjective.
I mean, of course, but yeah, it's an insightful course and
Yeah.
really gets into the depth of.
Yeah, and the US is so humongous in terms of fixed income market that you can't even believe because it's not just corporations that are issuing it, it's also governments and supranational entities and everything. So it's very wide.
Supranational, for people who don't know, are like World Trade Organizations and IMF and all those supranational or UN based or globally operating institutions. And national organizations are like Federal Reserve and whatever, RBI for Indians, and then there are municipal state level organizations. That depends on the on the state. Yeah, you have something to say.
So now, what technical skills did you have to apply? Not just technical skills, but the technical knowledge as well.
So it was not very intense as such, given it was more or less about fixed income in CFA level 1. I did not really have a finance undergrad. It was whatever I've studied. Finance is just CFA level 1 and 2. So it was pretty much that, and just reading up about a lot of stuff about what affects these entities and what is fixed income and everything around it. So to sum it up, it's not very complex to understand. You have to you just need one chance. Of course, it's not. It was about my luck as well that I found this job. So
Yeah, not many people can find.
How did
But
you find this job?
You had an economics degree. I think that might have given you an edge.
probably, and that was a really good time when companies were hiring. So probably also that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
What did they ask in your interview?
It was everything about securitization, US commercial real estate. What do I understand about it? So I was also because we had to draft a lot of press releases that pertain to our rating actions, and we monitored the ratings, right? The
Ratings,
performance of these underlying as well as the bonds. We had to annually release our press releases. So they also made us, as part of the interview, they also made me write reports, and there's a very different way of writing for such institutions. There's a style guide that every organization follows, so you can't
tell me
use-
about it.
it doesn't follow, very hi-fi words. It has to be very simple because
Absolutely.
all your, investors should be able to comprehend what you are
And
writing.
these organizations are really finicky about format, fonts,
Absolutely.
font
Yeah.
size,
Yeah, of course.
colors that
Yeah.
you use in your presentations.
Yeah.
Even on an Excel sheet, if you're coloring your columns in a certain way, it has to be in that universal color code that has been given to you by your organization. So that is interesting.
So yeah, I mean, I always have loved writing more than my speaking oratory skills. I have worked a lot more on writing skills. So I understand when when have to adapt a particular flair of writing. So that comes sort of easy to me. I'm not saying I'm great at it, but I worked a lot on that as well. So even during my interview, when they gave me a review of how I wrote that report, there were a lot of still points that I had to work on. So it's a continuous work on it. So it's not just about what you analyze. You should be able to put it across in a very concise manner. So your brain works in a very complex manner, but how you also put it to not just investors, that's a very far-fetched thing, but to your colleagues is also very important. So I would say work on that as well, because a lot of people are smart enough, but
Communication.
but their communication is comes as a drawback, and it's totally cool. But yeah, do work on that is what I would suggest.
So if the market were good, if you were offered a job in credit risk, would you take it, or
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
do you like that part?
Of course, definitely. There's this because there's so much to understand. There's so and I have worked only on commercial real estate backed mortgages. There is so much to learn in residential real estate as well. The other day I was trying to read about their methodologies and everything. It is so much more nuanced. They have interest rate swaps and everything going on in that, and it is really interesting. If you like that subject, then it's amazing. And again, if you want to work into a more quantitative side of it, you can apply both your Python skills as well as your credit risk knowledge, qualitative knowledge that you've acquired over here. So initially when I thought of pursuing this degree over here, my thought very much was that I want to get on this side of it. Of course, there's a lot of money, but there's a lot of math and everything that also comes with it. So
Money as in how much? Like if how much would a credit risk analyst earn here?
Here
If he's
in the
working with
US.
Python and Excel both.
should be about, if at my, I'm just going to say about with my level of experience with this and familiarity, I think it should start at about 150, 160.
150, 160K.
At least,
Per year.
yeah.
And for a fresher?
Again, I have not really.
If the fresher has enough experience and skills, I don't think anything
Yeah, I mean,
it's
it's
a very
not-
highly paid job.
Yeah, of
I
course,
feel
of course.
personally.
Yeah.
It's a very niche job as well.
Yeah.
Not many people
Yeah, of course.
can get through something like this.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you have the technical skills, you definitely should go for it because it's very rewarding and it's highly insightful as well. I mean, people learn a lot. I'm sure they learn a lot in whatever they're working in. But this kind of experience and exposure to an industry that is so huge in terms of sheer money volume, it's a very insightful experience for people who actually want to work in those volumes. There are people who are risk averse. There are people who love risk, and bonds is like in the middle. So I mean, for risk lovers, maybe equities is the way to go. But for bond lovers, unless it's the financial crisis, I think it's kind of in the middle.
Let's talk about MSQF now.
Yep.
How do you find the course? How do you find the opportunities?
Yeah, so opportunities in terms of employment.
There are not any right now, but the course.
Yeah, it had. So, but so definitely really good. I wanted to learn the math and programming behind it, which it is enough catering to, because it's not going too much into depth where novices like us find it very difficult, but it's the right amount. So it's really good to good for people like us, but of course to get into hardcore modeling and Python programming or related, opportunities, it is going to take a lot of effort. So this is a disclaimer for anybody who is, wishing to look at coming here with a focus that they want to get into. What do we say?
Creditors?
Quantitative quant roles.
Yeah.
It is this is a harsh reality, but you are going to be competing with data analysts, engineers, and a plethora of other professions that people are already coming from. So it is definitely difficult, but not impossible, I would say.
I mean, people have to start somewhere. So I
Exactly.
feel that this is a
Yeah,
great
yeah,
start
absolutely.
for people.
Yeah.
Even for the entry level jobs like quant-risk, right? They can definitely go for that and try to
Yeah.
segue into
Yeah.
a more hardcore quantitative field. But I feel that this is a great start for students who don't have that much of technical expertise like me. I did not have any programming knowledge. I mean, neither of nobody of us.
I don't think
None
so.
of us.
None of us had any programming language, and I think MSQF actually helped us with that, at least the basic knowledge, so that we can actually learn a bit of a complex language further in the future.
More than learning, it's about the mindset that you build
Yep.
when you're doing
Exactly.
master's course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
They
rigor.
tell you how to think and how you should be applying your existing knowledge. So even if I don't have any experience in credit risk or quant risk, I can still work in that field if I know how to think about it and what factors look at.
Absolutely.
Exactly. This is what Neil deGrasse Tyson also said.
Who?
Yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
He's a scientist. Come
Scientist,
on,
yeah.
physicist.
Yeah,
Neil
yeah.
deGrasse Tyson.
What, man?
But you
He's
can't
such a millennial sort of a person. I mean,
Yeah.
he's old, but but he keeps saying that, emphasizing on the fact that math, of course, you will try to avoid it in your early years or whenever, but the kind of brain wiring it establishes to solve your problems is what you will need for any situation. So it's not just when it comes to math or calculations, but just your life problems.
And how has your experience been in the 360 Huntington Fund, which is a Northeastern endowment fund?
Yeah, so people who don't know, she is our chief operating officer at
And
the
future
fund.
MD.
Future MD as well.
I didn't say that.
No, for us, she's the MD.
She is.
Yeah, she is definitely. So,
Yeah.
how has your experience been? I mean, so for people with no background of the fund is a one credit class that we have every semester, and to get into a management role, you have to be there in the fund for at least one semester, right? So Isha was actually. She wasn't the part of the fund initially, but she got in because of her willingness, and that is what helped her to get to.
Absolutely, I was auditing the class.
Yeah,
Oh, that's so formal, bro.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, sorry for the.
Keep sneezing, bro.
Yeah, sorry. So, so that's very good on her part that she took the effort to go into a zero credit class. People are going there for credit to remove one
Paying
directive, paying money. But no. So she went for a zero credit class just to be involved, and she did well enough to be promoted to COO, which is actually a commendable thing. I mean, especially for students who, have less background, but they want to do something good. So how was that?
I really thought we were sitting in the Bloomberg terminal. She was like, she had 2 or 3 worksheets open in both the screens. I thought she had a lot of experience with the worksheets.
Yeah.
Now I got to know she didn't have any background with it.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about your fun experience.
Fun
now.
experience.
Yeah, so definitely really great. So people think that valuations you can study it through your CFA or your corporate finance or other equity valuation or whatever courses that you can take. But honestly, experiential learning is at its truest over here. Of course, you will not get it. I mean, it's very preliminary right now. We are still trying to build on to how we can improve it, but yeah, we still want to at the same time build foundations so people can understand how to build thesis and model around it. So essentially my first semester, like you guys said, I audited. So I worked on an oil and gas field services company. It was and of course given the geopolitical tensions ongoing, it was really difficult to navigate through how to forecast the cash flows, and I think you've worked on that industry too. So it was really nice, and because CFA did teach me how to probably, play with numbers. But again, how to build a thesis is not what CFA is going to teach you. That is going to come with you reading a lot about, your reports that the banks, or investment banks, publish. So thanks to the Bloomberg Terminal access at our university, we have sell side, reports available to us on the terminal, and it's very important. You read through all of these, and then you arrive at your conclusion of how you want to forecast, cash flows, what the market is, and everything around it. And then talking about this semester, I was more on the operational side of it, not on the research side of it. But obviously, given this is still finance related stuff, finance did come through it. So Sumukh and I constantly keep debating about a lot
People
of
don't
things.
know about
People
Sumukh.
don't know.
But Sumukh essentially is the chief of research, and he and I are always in the Bloomberg terminal trying to read about stuff, or trying to just monitor our, portfolio and what is going around it. So yeah, and then because of that, I learn a lot from him. And there are people, our analysts, who are working on their stocks, and they ask us about how to go about certain things, and just that gives us enough opportunity to go and read about that as well, because we are also not well versed in all the sectors, of course. So it gives us also an opportunity to learn about it. So my operational work essentially, goes about how I can how I can maximize what we can do out of the fund, in terms of, there are a lot of people who probably don't get to work enough on certain things, even if they are, at a management level. How can I still maybe, give them certain aspects of work that they can work on? I don't know how to put this through, but yeah, just maximize the efficiency that we can bring in, so that people don't just, go ahead and get a credit for nothing. So
Makes sense.
in terms of tracking a particular sector, or revaluation of our target prices, this is what we have come across, that because the markets were at all-time highs very recently, our target prices were reached way before we wanted them to. So given our horizon is of 12 months, they reached in just one quarter.
Yeah.
So what to do about those stocks? So we thought of revaluating those, and all of that around it. So basically just this. And I have a lot more to work
Share.
on. I have a lot of more ideas that I can probably
But-
get in touch with and still talk to. Of course, it's just one credit, but yeah, I would still like it to be more more elaborate than what it is, with the same amount of time that we are still spending on the fund, right?
But I think it's also important to take care of all the analysts and the sector managers. We have not got any free pizza.
Yeah, no free pizza.
Cupcakes.
The fund
no
is
free coffee.
the fund has a value of $1.65 million.
It's more than that
Now
now.
it's
Yeah,
$1.7 million now.
and no free.
No free,
things
not even
now.
not even 1 basis point of that
Yeah.
is being utilized for.
Basis.
We
Okay.
expect something from you
Yeah.
as a E CEO.
As a CEO,
Yeah.
as a parting gift of the tenure,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, definitely. We that is something on my head.
Guys, please
and-
write justice for analysts in hashtag justice for analysts in the comments.
Bro, that was so scary for
Okay,
people who are using earphones.
I have a very devilish laugh, I know. But okay.
Yeah,
Anyway,
we know.
I think I have. This was it from my end.
Yeah,
You have
that's
any-
it, that's it.
Yeah, I think that's it. Isha, anything you would want to say to our viewers and to us as hosts? No.
Yeah,
That's bas
yeah,
khatam.
you
Bye,
can
bye.
say anything about us, not about technical stuff now.
Yeah, so stop eating my head so much. But apart from that, yeah, nothing like I would have, like I said in the previous podcast, our attempt that didn't go through. But if you guys have any questions, given this is very relevant to the current, the real estate market, or securitization, or the US markets in general,
Yeah.
given it is so relevant, I you can obviously get in touch with me. I had also recently, with Shikhar, visited a conference in New York where we attended a couple of sessions on real estate and fixed income, where they spoke a lot about their strategies in this particular environment, high interest rates, and how they are navigating around it. We got a lot of insights, so you can obviously get in touch with either of us, and we'll be happy to chat about it.
Okay. Anything you want to say about Market Karianas?
Yeah.
No, this is super great. I mean, look at me. I'm so such an enthused cutlet about it, and these guys are doing a great job at it. They are bringing a holistic, view about what sorts of students are coming over here, what background they bring with them. And you should definitely tune into all of their podcasts. Probably listen to them at 2x, not for my episode.
नहीं तेरे के लिए करा
They won't understand.
हाँ इसलिए 0.5 पे चलो मेरे इसमें.
point.
But yeah, keep doing the work that you are doing.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you, Isha.
Thank you,
we're
ma'am.
really
Thanks.
proud of what
Thank
you
you,
are
man.
doing.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Isha.
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you guys for watching,
That's, that's been Market Curry. See you in the next
Yeah.
one.
See you in the next one. Oh, bro, this happens every time.
Every time. This is the tradition for Market Curry now.
Yeah.
One thumbs up every video. Alright, guys.
Bye.
See you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.